Our next speaker is kind of done with the fight. As she'll tell you, she's booted the baggage out of her car and she's watching where the road takes her. Because Farrington is one hell of a driver. She's always loved the open road and is pleasantly surprised where it takes her. But here's what I love about it. She lets it be messy and she wears it so well. She doesn't toss the left side of her brain to the curb, the side that insists on having AAA triptychs and very stick to the plan that you've decided on. Instead, she straps it into the child's seat in the back seat, right next to the right side of her brain, like the twins that they are. And as she drives down the road, opening her eyes and seeing what's in front of her, the twins duke it out in the back seat. Here to tell us more about her open road, the magnificent driver herself, Farrington.
Good evening. It's today that I can sit here in front of you, proudly feeling accomplished, nervous as shit, but having opened my own restaurant, which I don't recommend doing on your own, and just having my first child 8 weeks ago today. Prior to all these wonderful things in my life, I loathed life. I walked through it with no self-confidence, always filled with doubt and fear in the direction I was headed, which was not what my peers were doing. From an early age, I had visions of grandeur. I wanted the bright lights of the big city. Growing up in a small conservative town in Kentucky was not my ideal of what the big picture was set out for me, and I wasn't about to let it to be. Luckily, my father was a pilot, my mother was from Brazil, where we spent many years as children, and where my love of food came into play. I got to travel to countries we read about in school at a very young age, and eat food that a 13-year-old wouldn't necessarily be eating in Kentucky. I never wanted to return home to Kentucky. Every day traveling seemed to be this experience of a lifetime, and it was for me. My eyes saw life open wide. I learned how to drive stick shift on the French Autobahn. I barely had my license. I was with my parents, and my father said, "Want to drive?" I looked at him stunned. He was so much fun when we were traveling. He pulled the car over, my mom in the middle of the back seat looking through the front, horrified, as I crawled into the driver's seat, looking at him for guidance, and all he said, "Get in the left lane, keep your left blinker on, and drive as fast as you can." I thought to myself, holy shit, this is going to be killer, and it was. I put the pedal to the floor, looked in the rearview mirror, and smiled at my mom, who was on the edge of her seat, white-knuckled, and yelling my dad's name. He was fast asleep. Moments like this filtered my upbringing. There were some insane fun times, but most of it was about becoming who my parents thought I should become. Study hard, you can be anything. I wasn't a good reader. I had difficulty retaining the information, my concentration level was slim, and I was fantasizing about becoming something I had no idea of. I just didn't want to grow up in a box. My parents believed that a young lady became a good wife, and maybe a secretary or something respectful. Are you kidding me? A secretary? Oh my God. I honestly had no idea what I wanted to be for the rest of my life. As the rest of my life at 17 seemed daunting. The rest of my life? Isn't that forever when you're 17? And add career day to the mix. This day scared the shit out of me. I stood in the doorway looking at the other kids smiling, shaking hands with representatives, as if they knew what life was in store for them. I cried out of great fear that I was a freak for not knowing what it was that I wanted to do. I think I turned my hazard lights on at this point. Was it really a direct route to get to where one is supposed to be in their life? Anxiety consumed me. Every minute I was under my parents' rule. I was miserable, combative to a degree. They expected me to go to college and get a degree that fit their mold for me. What is that? College was a larger town. New people, more questions, more insecurity, not to mention partying my ass off, figuring out how to send home the classes my parents expected me to take, getting their approval, and then changing them to pottery, painting, creative writing, fun stuff. Or then again, just getting the cash, hitting the Grateful Dead tours. I really didn't care at this point. Well, I did to a degree, but I knew all along that I was disappointing my parents. They thought I was abiding by the rules, which to me felt like a death sentence. The rules which were made to be broken, and I did that perfectly. As much as I did my own thing, I was filled with guilt as I knew when they discovered I was a farce, they would be disappointed. I continued this crazy train for years, and one day in fall semester, I got out of my chair, left class, went home and decided I couldn't do it anymore. I needed to run away. So I loaded up a U-Haul and moved to California, where I had friends and close family friends. For 3 weeks, I lived in complete fear that I did this, until they found me. And they were more terrified that I was dead than anything else, but finally, my parents received my message. I didn't want to live by the rules anymore, and I wasn't going to. Somewhere in there, I had the strength and courage to break away, but I didn't have the communication skills to just sit and tell them anything. Anytime I wanted to talk, it turned out to be a sermon coming from my dad, so I avoided that at all costs. My moving to California was a huge whim, and my true discovery of food was felt here, living right outside Sonoma's wine country and learning. I was living part of my dream. I began to look into culinary schools, and in this process, I mentioned it to my dad, who laughed at me and said, "You mean you want to flip burgers for the rest of your life?" I was mortified, and I responded, "No, I want to be a chef, damn it." He looked at me and shook his head, the typical response I received most of my life from him, never good enough, never. All my self-doubt was building me up to continue wondering, searching for what I was going to do. I was always seeking approval and never receiving it. As I was standing at a wedding reception a few months later after I told my dad I wanted to go to cooking school, and he again said no. Then a moment I never thought would happen happened. His best friend of 30 years said, "I'll support Lee going to culinary school. She's amazing at it. How much do you need, kid?" And my father turned red, and I walked away. The next time I saw my father, we were flying to New York City to look at the culinary school I had applied to and gotten into. After the tour, we looked at apartments, and I did it. I convinced him I could do this, and he let me. My path, my road, my route, it was still uncertain, still driving with a blinker here, but not so much hazards. I really felt like I landed in New York City when I was supposed to. I was finally going to finish something, a task I was never good at. This was my promise to myself. Get in the left lane, Lee, turn that blinker on and drive. This is my destiny. I get to cook. Believe in yourself. Believing was something I lacked. It goes right along with the doubt, the insecurity, in most of my moves thus far, but I had arrived in my element, cooking school. Oh my God, this was amazing. School was a ticket into some big restaurants, and I landed my first job in a 4-star restaurant. My father witnessed me graduating culinary school and dining in most of the places I ended up working, and for the first time in my life, I believed he may have actually been proud of me. I'll never know, as he never told me, and he passed away suddenly during my culinary climb in New York. His passing served as more fuel to my insecurity. I needed his approval desperately, and I was never going to get it. Of course, my mother consoled me and spoke of his joy that I found a career that made me happy, but I knew those were her words. She always wanted me to just be happy. After several years going through the routine of hard work, 16-hour days on my feet, $250 paid at the end of it, I wondered why I chose this line of work, comparing myself to my friends who continued on to get master's degrees and make 6-figure salaries. What the hell was I doing? Oh my God, Lee, am I really back here again doubting? Going around another curve? Are there roadblocks for everyone? Because I feel like I'm hurtling through many just to get to a happy place, and even when I arrive there, it's short-lived. This routine of questioning, arriving then departing, was wearing thin with me. In the back of my mind was the thought of moving, again. I recalled friends in California saying, "If you can't get back here, check out Maine." So I planned a long weekend to check out Maine, and I loved it. I rolled down my windows when I was driving up 95, smelling the intense pine trees, the access to the ocean, the fresh seafood, the people smiling and pleasant. The air was crisp and clean. It was beautiful, and just what I needed to recharge my juices and shake the feelings of questioning myself yet again. You got this, Lee. You're a chef. Believe in yourself. I started thinking about opening my own place, what it would take. I sat and talked to those close friends that managed to do it in the city and be successful with it. I wasn't sure I wanted to be in the city forever, especially after seeing 9/11 happen. I needed quality of life, and then I chose to check out Maine again. This time, looking into the cost of living, and on a whim, got approved for an apartment. Said, why not? I took it. Went back to New York, began wrapping up life after a decade of cooking, making friends and connections. Many crossroads I managed to hurdle, all going full speed ahead with my foot to the pedal and my blinker on. Leaving New York for the way of life should be was joyous. I could not wait to get to Maine and make it happen. I don't know why I thought I could just move to another state and think I could simply open a restaurant. It wasn't so easy. I didn't know the first thing of the culinary demographic, and I got depressed thinking of going to work for someone else again. I bit the bullet and got into 4th Street, the forerunner in the food scene here at the time, but it was very short-lived. My culinary background was French, Italian, French Indian fusion, and all the Brazilian food my mom exposed me to. I was in search of more flavor, more flair, and some diversity. My next landing was at UFA. I called this home for the next 2.5 years. I greatly learned about diners in Portland, but still knew I was at a crossroad, that I needed my own place. Life was challenging me at this stage here, as my personal life was unraveling, and my downward spiral removed me from Maine for a few months so I could regroup. I spent these few months back in Kentucky with my mom. I learned about myself, my weaknesses, my strengths. I found myself quiet and reflecting on all I'd managed to see and do in my time on Earth. I dug deep into myself. I spoke with my family members about what they thought of me and my insane journey down the paths I'd gone. The responses blew me away. I heard, "I've envied you and your ability to follow your heart. I wish I'd done all the things you've done, Lee. It's rare that we get to live our life to the fullest, but you've managed to do so with all of your experiences thus far." I cried. Maybe I wasn't so screwed up after all. Yes, I was heartbroken, but I wasn't broken. I was thankful for my time of healing in my mother's home as I drove myself back north to Maine. I had many hours of reflection, of feeling more confident with each mile, like I was rising to myself. I sang along with the radio as if performing on TV. I laughed out loud at myself, and I cried to many thoughts. But I came back to Maine on a mission. I needed to find a space to put my energy into, to build my restaurant. I really wanted to make a difference. I think all along my way, as confusing and trying and emotional it has been for me, I just wanted to make a difference. I realized here that I wasn't alone in this. I met people along my search for this space, people I would have missed out on if I stayed in one place. In these meetings, I found my space by chance, by being in the perfect place at the right time. Someone said timing is everything, and it was for me this day, the day I was getting my hair cut, and my stylist who owned her building had just joined the Peace Corps. The next thing I know, we're having dinner together and discussing me purchasing her building. Oh my God, I have a building. I'm really doing this? Oh shit, I really have to do this now. The build-out began that following January. I was excited. My goal was to reuse materials from the salvage store, make the space rustic, cozy, and try to be sustainable. What was to be our soft opening, I came to Figa to get things ready. Went to use the restroom, washed my hands, no water. I was miffed. Went to the kitchen sink, no water. Ran to the bar sink, no water. I panicked. People are going to eat here tonight. I have no fucking water. Do I call the police or do I call the lawyer? I got a hold of my lawyer. I was in such a state of panic, my blood was boiling through my veins. There was no opening tonight, and there would be no opening for the next several weeks. I found myself in a legal battle over the rights to a shared water line for almost a year. I didn't see this roadblock coming at all. A million questions ran through my mind. I don't understand any of it. I felt defeated, embarrassed, a failure before I could even start. It was typical of my life, so I thought. Just when I thought everything was okay, the curve gave way to a block again, hazards flashing brightly. And my thoughts and fears resurrected themselves for a very long visit. The next few months were painful as hell. I would find myself sitting in Figa, looking around, feeling proud, then tears bursting out of me. Of course, when one is in the thick of their muck, they don't see the answers or really hear them. It was all right there in front of me. One is never prepared for life and its moments of turbulence or even the great parts. It's all unexpected, the big unknown. And in my time of frustration, depression, waiting, wandering, I finally got my water line. I got my restaurant open, realizing through it all that I wasn't ready for it. That the time I wasn't able to open despite the ugly legal crap, I needed that time. I got my personal life in order, I climbed my mountain, I set my flag in the ground, and I sit here, with you feeling grounded and complete in the end. And I finally realized that what I have in my life, I actually deserve.